So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you will enjoy today's conversations. For the people that are joining us for the first time, we host these cafes every month, and we really talk about the realities of building organizations because that is what we do, that is what we're passionate about. So in last month's cafe, Craig hosted us on a topic of transforming strategy into action, and he did that looking at it with the lens of Mintzberg's organizational structures. And today we'd like to stick to those structures, but now we look at what collaboration means, what it looks like in those different structures. So because as we know, the actual work in organizations is done by people in collaboration, and we loosely call that teams. Hence, this is today's topic. So how we do this is, for starters, I'm not sure how many people have joined us now, Liesel, but usually we would start with breakaway rooms where we get you guys acquainted. You meet everyone that's on the call. Well, not everyone, but some of the people that are on the call. So Liesel would usually now set the breakaway rooms where you can introduce yourself, and then we'll get to the theory. That is when we'll get to the overview of what those organizational structures are, as I know that some of you maybe didn't attend last month's cafe, so maybe you would like a bit of a recap, or maybe an introduction a little bit as to what those structures are. And then we'll get to distinguish between teams and groups, because I feel like it is important for today's topic. And then we'll get to the actual team dynamics in practice and see what happens there. Thereafter, then we can get to the breakout discussions, which is the main party, the main event. And then we come back to the plenary where we get to share some ideas and practical takeaways. So is it going to happen, Liesel? How many people do we have on the call? Do we need a breakaway?
We're going to do 2 breakout rooms. So there's smaller discussion and then we can come back.
All right. So in the breakaway session, we would like you to do a bit of an introduction. Tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and really what piqued your interest in today's topic, and maybe talk a little bit about what teams look like in your organization. Are they collaborating successfully? Why do you say so? Why are they not? Stuff like that. So please enjoy. Great. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good warm-up there. If you were whiplashed, of which I think most people were, don't worry. Round 2 will be much longer, and you'll have plenty of time to talk about everything that you want to talk about. So right now, I would like to take maybe 1 or 2 people to share what came up in your group. What was the feeling like in the rooms about team collaboration?
Okay, I think if you don't mind, let me kick off. My name is Martin Kopsch. I run my own company, The Learning Zone. The room 1, we were just chatting about, how do we all form part of teams, and really without being in a team, you stand completely on your own and become pretty effective. So we were talking about collaborating across the supply chain of whatever we do, not the department supply chain, but within our own departments, within our HR areas, within various areas in the business itself. So we need to, in order to deliver service, first of all, understand what is required of us. So there's team collaboration that's needed. And then how do we deliver whatever service we have to deliver, once again, as part of teams? I don't know if anybody else from room 1 wants to add anything.
Beatrice is good.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Martin. Yes, it seems like you've shared everything. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, most of the time, especially in team development, people tend to focus on their immediate teams, but then cross-functional teams as well. It's very important to collaborate because that's where the silos mostly come up that actually hinder collaboration within the organization. So thank you for sharing. Room 2. I think Lavine has her hand up.
I
Or
don't see a
not?
hand. No, I don't
No,
see a hand.
it's my hand on Lavine's name.
So I think the person who just unmuted is one of our friends from Bank. Is it Renelle?
Maybe I'm still not muted.
No,
Forgot to
yeah,
mute
you.
myself. I just forgot to mute myself. I was also part of group 1. So I think Martin kind of summarized well for us to say that, you know, regardless of where we are, we form part of multiple teams, and whether we have to collaborate ourselves or also assist teams, cross-functional teams, functional, natural teams to collaborate better. That's kind of the role and what sparked my interest and our interest to be here today.
Thank you, Renelle.
Thank you. We're assuming, Renelle, we're assuming you're Renelle because your name is a NB03 what. So I hope it's Renelle because I think NB stands for Nedbank.
Sorry, yes, that is Renelle.
Okay.
Yeah, in our group we had Richard. I don't see him.
There he is. His camera's on.
I had thought he was taking notes as we were talking. But maybe he will come after me. Just very brief. The issue of collaboration for teams of OD, I think we understood the importance of it. But from what we have said, or maybe that I have said, was it's not mostly difficult to collaborate within the OD teams if there is a project that they are working towards. It becomes more important for collaboration of the business units within the company that you have to do structuring. That becomes very important because they have to see the same picture of their organization and be able to advise where there are challenges for you as an OD practitioner to correct using structuring in terms of either grouping, separating, unbundling, building new, or raising new strategies that they have to perform on and create opportunities for skills so that if they don't cooperate and collaborate amongst themselves, it becomes very, very challenging. I think that is the level that we discuss this matter on.
Thank you, Matapa. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone from room 2 want to chip in?
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jack. I'm always taking notes, so I wasn't doing a summary of the session, but yeah, I think you've nailed it there. Thank you.
So it seems like there's a consensus around cross-functional collaboration. So I hope we will get to look at that a bit in today's session. And I hope it's going to bring up some insights. So let me share my screen again so we can get started. All right, so a bit of a recap, like I promised that we did do a bit of a deep dive on this in last month's OD Café. So right now I'm just gonna do a recap for those who didn't join and just a little reminder for everyone. So we're looking at this because Mintzberg makes a very clear distinction between the 4 structures to help us understand organizations better. Each of these operating under different principles and different dynamics. I don't really think this is entirely new, but I'm sure you can agree with me if you've worked in different organizations over the years. You know how, depending on where you are, the feel of the organization is different, the decision-making protocols are different, the reporting structures are different, and so as the teams and how collaboration is seen and how it happens essentially. So understanding which structure an organization aligns with, it really helps us tailor some of our strategies to complement the specific way of functioning of that specific organization, because we can't really expect everything to perfectly fit all organizations, different organizations. So we need to be able to customize our approaches. So instead of trying to like really force change on the structure itself, so when it's not really needed at times, sometimes yes, it is needed, but sometimes you don't need to really disrupt the system, but just apply approaches that really complement the structure. For instance, what I mean here is what works in a highly centralized program machine, it might hinder collaboration if you want to apply that in a professional assembly. So you need to understand these structural differences. It's important for you to effectively support the organization's natural workflow and, you know, just to avoid disruptions, confusion, and uncertainty. So there is no one size fits all. Hence, we're now looking at all of these different structures, and it's made simple by Mintzberg. So looking at a personal enterprise, think of a small startup, let's say maybe a clothing boutique by a very creative designer. So here the business, the core business revolves around this person who is the founder and their vision. So most likely who's the CEO of the company, which works different than from a programmed machine. So usually manufacturing companies like, let's say, a Mercedes-Benz, which is a very fresh memory in my head right now, since I got to see their plant for the first time in East London last week when we went down for a management team development workshop. Great experience there. So if you look at companies like that, as you can imagine, it's a highly structured environment where sticking to rules and set processes is very important for valid reasons. And then we have a project pioneer. That's companies like your Google, your Microsoft, project-based, where now we get to loosen up a bit, be more agile, let teams innovate freely. And lastly, then we look at a professional assembly that is also different. For instance, your hospitals or law firms that are expert-driven. And I mean, there's a family lawyer, you can find their tax lawyer or an estate lawyer, same as hospitals where you can find a neurosurgeon, you can find a gynecologist, and so on. So each of these professionals are accountable for their own individual mandates and do not have to always collaborate or consult with other professionals unless they work on a specific case together. So I hope that it juggles our memory a bit and also sets the foundation for this discussion. Now, I did say earlier on when I was looking at the agenda that we'll get to look at really what groups are, what teams are across these organizational structures. I know that most of the people that are on the call have a good understanding of what groups are, of what teams are, as you may be working with different teams every day, involved in team development and so forth. But often we get inquiries about our team development programs. And when you speak to clients in the contracting phase, you want to understand who the actual client is. So you want to understand the team. And then often in that, in those discussions, you can find out that these people are actually not a team, and trying to make them a team can actually create more problems, because the nature of the organizational structure doesn't really support that. It's not meant to support teams, but rather work groups, and vice versa. So that is why I decided to sort of like touch a bit on the differences. So by definition, a team has has well-defined roles. There's interconnectedness, there's mutual responsibility and accountability, working towards a common goal. And then on the other hand, when you talk about work groups, then it can, for instance, be heads of department in a large organization, loosely connected by the fact that they work for this organization, but working in very distinct units and roles. You can find that these people hardly talk to each other or communicate unless there's a reason for it. Maybe then the heads will meet in a quarterly meeting, you know, like it's not very frequent. Until then, maybe you bring them together in a project where they have a shared goal to achieve, and now they can form a team. So otherwise, we start off as a work group, and it's important to make that distinction. So I'd like for us to look at a few aspects that impact how teams and groups operate, meaning leadership, working together, how we communicate, and the autonomy that we might have or not really have in a team or work group. So leadership in a work group is really centralized, very directive, and there's minimal emphasis on shared leadership, which is different than for teams, where there's a shared collaborative leadership, and the roles here are distributed according to the expertise. So here, if someone is very good at, let's say we have an IT issue in the project that we're conducting, then we know that the IT expert in this team is going to lead that part of the project as needed. So we then to share the leadership, we share the expert roles that we have when we're working on a common goal in a team. And then also looking at collaboration. In a work group, collaboration is very limited. There's a lot of independent work that goes on compared to teams where they're very collaborative, members are interdependent, so we keep passing on the baton. So we work closely to achieve that common goal. And then when you look at communication, in a work group, it's very task-based. So we have to have something that we need to talk about that really connects us. And it's often top-down communication in work groups, and very minimal interaction. Like I said previously, that maybe we can meet quarterly just for everyone to run us through their portfolios, not much communication happening there. And just for everyone to know what's happening in the units, which is different than compared to the frequent communication in teams, because the mutual feedback is encouraged. We need to always check on the alignment on our objectives. And then when we look at the autonomy, very low in work groups, and members here just follow the set processes and procedures, rules and regulations, all of that. But then when it comes to teams, teams can now decide how they distribute the work depending on the project at hand. They can decide how they're going to communicate, how they carry out the task, and so forth. So really the roles here adapt to support the collective goals that they have. Now, this brings us to a more practical look of how we can look at these organizational structures in the workplace. So I want you to keep your focus on the core business, or the core function really of the organization when you look at each of the structures. because in all of them, you can find both groups and teams really, but there will be one that dominates, or one that you can see that it's best fitted, it works best to serve the core business, or in alignment with the nature of the organization. For instance, what I mean is, with a personal enterprise, if we keep with that boutique example that I made earlier on, maybe let's say it's David Klale, it's Gert Otzia, or Maklosa, a South African designer. What really works best here are work groups, as they are focused on the specific task, like let's say design or marketing, in support of the creative, in support of the founder or the CEO of the small organization. So collaboration here is more informal, and it's really directed by the individual, by their vision of what they want the brand to be like and what they want the field to be like. So each group then aligns their efforts to this person's idea, this one individual. And that is fine if we want to maintain his brand, because imagine now if everyone has a say on the designs, and then now it turns into something else. But if you enforce formal teams here, you try to really make teams out of this unit, then you may restrict the creative flow. You might change the entire thing, as the team members now might have to, they do the work, but now they have to wait for the leader's approval, which can create delays, and not just slowing down the productivity, but then it can be frustrating for employees if they feel like their efforts are constrained. And then looking at a programmed machine, also keeping to the example of, let's say, a car manufacturing company like Mercedes-Benz. What works best here is really structured work groups within their defined roles, as this then it aligns them with the system that is usually very structured, bureaucratic, it's routine based. I mean, you know how you assemble the car, you know that when you're done with this part, then it's passed on there, and you do the same thing over and over again. Hence, all the cars look the same. And then really, this ensures consistency, it ensures quality, and maintains efficiency all the way. What's not ideal here is if you want to prioritize teamwork, like formal teams, because then that can create disruptions when it comes to efficiency. There can be some deviations, be it in safety, or, you know, even the quality standards, which is very important in such an environment. It's quite a big deal. So also here, even though work groups are the foundation, team-based projects can be there. You can find team-based projects, and it's valid, like maybe your research and development. So it can still play a role within the strict guidelines. But then what works best is really work groups. And then looking at Project Pioneer, like let's say Discovery or Google or Microsoft, what works best here when we're looking at the core business and what the business is trying to achieve, it's the support of the natural structure is supported really by cross-functional teams, which is something that came up a bit in your conversations as well. This supports then the flexibility, the creativity, and as well as the fast-paced environment, which Project Pioneer is. So teams here, they can freely share expertise, they can adjust their roles according to each project, all working together towards a common objective, whether they're launching a new product offering or consulting on a client project. So that works here. But then if you want to insist on rigid role-specific work groups, then you may have some problems, because then it stifles the adaptability, it stifles innovation, it just slows down the project, you know. limiting the creativity of problem solving. So teams here, they drive the structure, but then sometimes work groups can be there, for instance, technical support or data analysis, that can be useful as well. But then to support the core business, the main functionality, it's usually the work groups. And then when it comes to the professional assembly, like for instance, a law firm, what work best here is work groups based on their areas of expertise. So supporting informal collaboration, which would look like, having a lawyer work independently on each client case while they're still able to seek support if needed, Trying to enforce teams here may not really be beneficial because it can really be restrictive on the professionals. And professionals in these spaces, they tend to really value autonomy and working independently, and it works. So if you want to really enforce collaboration here as in formal teamwork, then it can lead to low morale, some inefficiencies, some confusion, because it's best for just one lawyer to focus on a client. But sometimes there can be a major case where then some integration of the expertise may be needed. But then, as mentioned earlier on, we're just focusing on the core business and, the day-to-day, the usual, business as usual. So now that I've done a little bit of the foundation on why we're talking about this, why groups and teams, why the structures, and how we look at it, then I hope that I've sort of like built an understanding of how teams thrive in different environments. For instance, environments that really require creativity, innovation, different views, and the interdependence doesn't stifle that, but then it actually helps. So work groups, on the other hand, they are very effective in structured environments where the work is very routine-based. So if you understand the kind of structure that you operate in, I believe that you have a better chance at improving productivity, making sure that teams are efficient, ensuring that you customize your strategies to fit the unique demands of each organizational structure. That is the whole idea of this. And good people, that marks the end of my monologue. Now, I would like to hand over back to you in the breakaway rooms, where then you'll get to discuss the practical side of this. What is your organizational structure? What works best there? Is it work groups? Is it teams? And why do you say so? Then after that, maybe if you still have time, you can get to talk about the challenges that you face when it comes to collaboration in your unit, in your department, in your organization, and just how the structure or the nature of the business influences that. Does it help? Does it hinder it? What needs to happen, Yes, welcome everyone. I cannot wait to hear all the practical stories. What's happening in real life?
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm representing, my name is Gawe Gazi. I'm representing, I think it was group 2.
Yes.
I had Levin in my team as well as Sam in my team. So I will look to them to assist in the event that I've missed out anything. So we first identified, just recapped in terms of the different the structures basically. So when I'm going to start with mine because that's going to be fresh quickly. So I work for the South African National Blood Service. So what I shared with the team is that on our side, I would look at our organization more in terms of the programmed machine as well as the professional assembly given that we obviously are a quality-driven environment, we obviously need to ensure efficiency, etc., and make sure that our standards aren't interrupted in any way because of the quality of what we need to serve and provide the communities and other departments as well. And then looking at the professional assembly as well, we employ a lot of professionals in our organizations, from doctors to technologists, people in various who are experts in their fields. So obviously it's important for us to ensure that from time to time we work as work groups, and I shared with the team that more recently we've been more of engaging in as cross-functional teams, where there's issues that need to be discussed, because what we know with our organization is that everything is like a domino effect. One department has an impact on the next one, etc. So it's important for us to to work in terms of those groups, and from time to time we do that. One of the challenges that we would face at times is that which I actually alluded to as a more of a challenge, but then it's also an advantage as well, which serves as an opportunity, because when you work in such groups, because you're so, as when you're in a team, you're always like focused in terms of your own department and division, and you basically sometimes are not aware of certain things, which working in cross-functional teams or in a work group, someone else will enable you to look at gaps that you haven't looked at. So it's providing you with fresh eyes to have a view of whatever it is. But on a day-to-day basis, our teams, because sometimes we go out on mobiles, majority of the teams go out to mobiles. So we work in groups, in teams, and in terms of the processing labs, etc., they would also work in the various teams. So it's a bit of both that we look at, and then those are the challenges that we face. Lavina, on her side, she works for almost like a service delivery environment or industry. And she said on her side, theirs is more program machine, as well as a bit of project pioneering as well. Because from their side, they also need to ensure that there's quality, but then there's also structured work groups that also work cross-functionally. And it's important for them, and it's imperative for them to actually work together as teams to ensure that, because it's timeline driven, it's important for them to meet, to ensure that timelines are still met regardless of the constant changes that actually take place in the environment. And also she mentioned that because there's a merger currently happening, it's important for them to constantly be talking to each other in those work groups. So it becomes important for them to ensure that happens. The challenges are obviously in terms of meeting often, and I think that's what she said, just to make sure that they collaborate in terms and agree of the changes and things that are actually happening currently as well. And then Sam works for the for the city of Joburg. So he also indicated that there's a side of program machine, and him being in an OD environment also indicated that on this side as well, it also ends up being more of a professional assembly, but at the same time, the project pioneer, because of the various projects that they need to embark on. And it's important for them to obviously get support from the various entities or stakeholders, because obviously with any municipality, we'd know that it's heavily unionized. So it's important for them to be consulting all the time, etc. But also what his challenges have been recently, or he says, is that because of the OD shortage in their team, they actually battling to work together, and they tend to be more personal enterprise versus the professional assembly. And ideally, they would love to work together. So now what happens is that they find themselves collaborating after the fact, now just to touch base as to what's happening, etc., as a team. So there's quite a lot of things that are happening. I think because of the nature and because it's not centralized, everything is decentralized, trying to get everything together is sometimes just a bit of a battle for them. But I think it's work in progress. Sam, have I got it right? Yeah. So that's really what I had to share.
Yes, thanks, guys. I think they're just one part. So as OD, we more professional assembly and professional, sorry, not personal. So
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah.
everything
Okay.
else I agree. And maybe just to add to say that we also, as a city, we have structures that force that collaboration, like your oversight structures. Anything that we do has to go through certain approvals. Your executive team management would needs to ensure that whatever project or report that has been presented does not look at the impact citywide, and then it will go to your political oversight structures to see whether whatever that is presented also benefit the community. So those structures, they force collaboration at an organizational level. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Thanks.
Thank you, Karakazi. Thank you so much, Sam, for clarifying that. I had already put a note as to, I wanted to give that more airtime as to how does a municipality now turn into a personal enterprise? And not that it doesn't happen. My curiosity was on the fact that sometimes there are organizations where in practice, even though it's not official, in practice, in the day-to-day activities, you feel like there's this central figure of which everything revolves around. So that piqued my interest. So thank you for clarifying that. Kawekazi, I like how you framed your challenge, your cross-functional challenge, as an opportunity, because really the fresh eyes are much needed. For instance, if you look at maybe the finance department or finance team, it may, and let's say a marketing team, we can be really sure what we want to do there. We want this marketing budget because we think this is gonna work. This is what we want. But then without seeing it on with the lens of the financial unit, then there may be some clashes there. So that understanding is very important. So I like that you brought that up. Thank you, Kawekazi. That was room 2, right? So are we tracking back to room 1?
Yeah, room 1 had Beatrice, Martin, and Renal.
Yeah, so they've asked me to give feedback. We definitely didn't discuss it in that much detail than that group 1 did. We kind of shared ideas, but and struggle a little bit with the definitions to put into, how would that apply? Because kind of still our challenge in a big organization is often to just get a work group to evolve into a team, because that's what we want. We want them to really feel that they're part of a team and deliver to one goal. But we managed to start differentiating perhaps a little bit around what would a work group look like in the work that we do. Either Ian and Martin as more individual consultants, and then also in the organization. So I think a work group, and we defined it quite nicely, is that in her work with the WITS Business School, you would have that would be more of a work group, because everybody comes in, does what they need to do, and then would leave again. Whereas, and I think in our environment, in the bigger corporate, it would probably be within the more agile environment where you have, people from different disciplines working together to deliver on a particular solution or process enhancement, but they come in with their individual expertise. But it's not about, they still need to apply team principles, but they're not necessarily a team. They would then walk away once it's delivered and then go back into their normal teams. And sometimes they double hat. They have to deliver within their own team still, but then also from time to time form part of that project team or scrum that they've been part of. So I think that was our conversation. But then from a team perspective, looking at the way that the organization is structured, is that at an executive level, you have people, it starts filtering down that you have different disciplines together as a team. So you would have them looking at the overall delivery for the business, but then they would have these areas of specialization as it goes down into the organization. But they still need to, they're a team, but then there's also the cross collaboration. And it's always been a challenge within organizations, they're not to have that silo mentality, but to say, how do we then collaborate for the overall good of the business, and not necessarily, if we break it down in a Nedbank context, to be sales, credit, operations, finance. And that's why at your Manco and DIFCO level, you have these disciplines working together to having to deliver overall, and we're being measured. They're not on whether sales delivered within a, let's say, retail environment. It's around, did all of us deliver? So how because we won't make the numbers if everybody didn't deliver on what we agreed to as a team. And that's where we have that constant challenge to help teams to collaborate better, cross-functionally as well as functionally within their own discipline.
Focusing mainly on the collective results rather than the individual business units.
Absolutely. There's no point in individually thinking that a team has done, or a discipline has done well, if collectively we haven't delivered in terms of numbers.
I always think of that one child in the playground who wants to have the ball all to themselves. By the end of the day, they are tired, they enjoyed playing, but then they were just playing by themselves. The team didn't win because you were holding the ball. So it's individual results, not overall results. And I like that you brought up the reality of things, that we tend to use the word teams loosely, which there's no harm most of the time, because we want to be united towards this common goal. You want to have that team feel, you want to feel like we're all in this together. But then really the reason why sometimes we need to separate work groups from teams is to look at the leadership. Leadership is different in a work group, and it's different in a team. Look at how are we going to collaborate. It's going to be different if we are a work group or we're a team. Same as communication, and really how much leeway, how much autonomy, how independent can we really be? Are we able to switch things up and decide tomorrow that we're not using syringes now to draw up blood, we're going to use something else? We can't do that if you're at the blood services, for an example. So it is very important. Thank you for sharing, Ronelle. Would anybody from that room like to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to invite them to add if I missed anything.
I think all I'm going to add is to say thank you. Sorry, Beatrice, over to you.
Carry on. No, carry on. You just wanted to say thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you because, guys, sorry, the issue around what is a work team and what is a group. My background is an engineer, irrespective of what I do now. And as an engineer, I need standards, I need structure, I need definitions. So I apologize. I kind of hogged the conversation a little bit in that respect. But I think, yes, Ronelle very, very competently summarized all of it. And also it made me think, I mean, was in banking background also. The fact that the bank has to, or retail bank has to deliver on final targets, has to compete with other banks in the country, that will only work if collectively everybody is going in the same direction. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just a quick one from me, Mbali, and thanks, Ronelle. That was a very comprehensive report back. Just one little point I want to add in, and that is we also chatted about the rise of hybrid and virtual teams in the last few years, and particularly in high-tech, globally widespread teams across the world, etc. It's been much more of a kind of work group thing. You just get on with it. You're responsible for what you need to deliver on, and that's it. But for me, the conversation has changed in the last couple of years around virtual teams. And I'm hearing a lot of how do we build a team in a virtual environment? And I'm hearing a lot of links back to their employee engagement strategies, how do they actually build a team even in a purely virtual environment? So I think the conversation is changing on that one. Thanks. That's the point I wanted to add.
Thanks, Bea.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. You're bringing up a very important point, because as much as we want to build teams, we also need to be aware of the environment that we're in right now. In as much as it has become really easy to collaborate and connect for people online, it also brings up its own challenges, you know, when it comes to building teams. All right, so we have 4 minutes on the clock. Would anybody else like to add anything?
So Richard and Matapa's room still have to share.
Yes, yeah, we had somebody fall off just as it started. Jack, please feel free to share your thoughts.
Maybe not there anymore.
I don't see Jack.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You can also see me now, ne?
Yes, we can.
In the dark.
Yeah.
Yes, the silhouette.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was just muted. I think most of the feedback that we had, we share with the other groups. What I think was very important for us, maybe just to give feedback, it's the work groups. And in our definition of work groups, what's the people that come from the different business units in the company that you have to work with, maybe to do an organizational diagnosis. One of the biggest challenges is you would find those people from the different business units not incongruent about the organizational strategy. And as an OD practitioner, you facilitate, because you cannot move until there is common understanding of what their organization is all about. And one of the resolve that we normally take is to get an executive manager to bring them in terms of what are the rules in the organization and what is the strategy of the organization, where is the organization heading, so that they are able to translate that into their different business units to say, these are the things that we will be contributing to the organization, because that is where we want them. Because once they know that, they are able to give the team a proper diagnosis of what each business unit is doing correctly or not doing correctly, and how that it is not doing correctly affect the rest of the organization. So in that context, you do experience that, but there is a resolve, particularly in programmed structures as compared to your enterprises, individual enterprises. But I think we spend much on the programmed one, because there are rules that are there are directives, there are policies, there are, you know, this sort of documents that give direction into the organization.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jack. You brought a very important point of teams being mandated by someone senior in the organization, because before we get to how we're going to do the job, how we're going to share the work and collaborate, we need to understand what is the whole organization trying to do? What's the bigger picture? What's the vision? And how we're going to get there? We is the strategy, which reminds me of our PT, purposeful teams. That's usually the first step. We get a senior person to mandate the team and work around that mandate. Thank you so much for sharing. I am aware that we quickly running out of time. So if anybody needs to leave us, have other commitments, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us, engaging with us, and sharing some insights as to what's happening in your world. And please look out for our next cafe. That's going to be on the 4th of December, where Craig is going to host us, leading a session on management of fear. If you're wondering what that is, please check out his LinkedIn blog that we published yesterday on our LinkedIn page. It's going to give you some kind of an idea. And please join us and see you then.